Welcome to our, November 14th Mornings with Mayesh. Ryan O'Neill is joining me today to help us prepare for 2024. Can you believe it, guys? He is the founder and CEO of Curate, a software platform with various products to help event professionals manage costs, track expenses, stop overbooking rental items, and a whole bunch more. And I hope that you stay with us today as we tackle pricing, automation, setting goals, cash flow, and technology. All things to think about as we finish up 2023 and gear up for 2024. So super excited about this show, guys. Again, if you have any questions, please put them in the comments. We will get to them. Also, as a reminder, because everyone always asks me, if you cannot stay or you are missing this live, it's okay. Everything is recorded and the replays will be available on Facebook and YouTube right away. I'm live there. Hey guys, I'm on live, just so you know, on Facebook, YouTube, and Instagram, all at the same time by the magic of technology, which I love. And then also we turn this into a podcast. So that will be available on all of your favorite podcast platforms. And of course, you can find everything, including the show notes and the links and things that we talk about, up on mayesh.com on our blog. So lots of good stuff. And also wanted to let you guys know before we get started that we have our final workshop coming up in 2024. We're wrapping things up in our corporate headquarters in Los Angeles. And that will be held on December 5th. So this design tour is with Amy Balsters. The workshop is amazing. We go over color theory, spiral bouquet. We've gotten so much amazing feedback from all different types of florists, and just a lot of them saying that going to this, they were able to apply what they learned right away, saving time, saving money, and those are all good things for businesses. Yes. So I hope we can see you there. I will share the link in the comments, of course. And then I also wanted to make sure that you save the date, guys. It's speaking of 2024, my team has been working on a lot of 2024 things already for the last couple of months. And we are going to be hosting our Customer Appreciation Week the week of January 15th. It'll be that Tuesday through Friday. And we will be hosting the Battle of the Blooms design contest again. So that's really, really exciting. People loved it. So if you are thinking about applying to be one of our contestants, just stay tuned for more details. Those will be coming out soon. And with that, we are ready to go. I'm going to bring on Ryan and let's go. Hey, Ryan, how are you?
I'm doing awesome. How are you?
I am good. Thank you so much. We were just saying that we haven't done this in probably about 6 months, but I was looking back at some like really old videos, and I'm pretty sure you did this with me back in like 2017 or something like
Sure.
that. So yeah, just to kind of make us all feel a little bit older.
I feel like
today.
I've lost hair since you've told me that.
I love that. I haven't lost any hair, but I have a lot more grays.
Right. I totally understand it. Like I always say that my kids, for whatever reason, when we had babies, we had bald babies. They just bald and chubby, and it's like the older they get, the more they look like their mom. But starting out, they're like, oh, they're the spitting image of their dad, and then they get beautiful, long, luscious hair, and they're like, oh, they look just like their mom. Like, thanks. I see what you're saying.
I love it. I love it. So Ryan, like I said, you have been on here quite a few times with me, but for the people that might not know who you are, can you just get us started by introducing yourself and sharing a little bit about your flower story?
Yeah. My name's Ryan O'Neill. I'm the founder of Curate. My wife and I got married in 2010. She was a florist, and over the process of her working in her company, she just saw so much growth. And we said, hey, we've got to create, we need to create our own company versus us working for other people. I like to joke, there's a particular florist that if they had paid my wife $1 an hour extra, we wouldn't have started our own company, right? None of this would have happened if she had paid us $13 an hour instead of offering us $12 an hour, right? And so for us, we were like, you know what? We aren't going to take that job. We're just going to go start our own thing. And from that, everything changed. And so that's, how do you say, having your self-worth just changed everything in our story, and knowing what value that you bring. And so we started our own company. We were really in 2013 riding this wave of Instagram and Pinterest were both created in 2010. Well, you want to feel really old? Those were created 14 years ago. Both created in 2010. And so there's this wave of people that were wanting more experiences at their weddings and events. We rode that wave and said, hey, let's start helping these people who want to do more than just pick flowers out of a book. They want to be able to have a custom designed experience for their event. So we started building those, and we saw some great growth in that. We saw so much growth that it was taking us too long to do basic things in creating these proposals or sending out contracts, and we didn't feel confident in sending out the contracts were Word docs, or they were little hacked together invoices that didn't really reflect who we were. So we created Curate and automated all of those processes to the point now we've got thousands of users on Curate, and a lot of small businesses that we're impacting. And that's what we're passionate about, is helping so many other businesses that have stories similar to ours.
I love it. I love it. Thank you, Ryan. Always love hearing your story. And also, just a reminder, guys, so we have 5 areas of focus that we're going to be chatting about today to help you guys, our community, gear up for 2024. Are you guys ready to go? Okay, I am. All right, first up is pricing. Ryan, how should we be thinking about pricing and preparation for New Year? And pricing's obviously such a big question. We talk about it throughout the year, but I would love to hear your thoughts on this.
Yeah, absolutely. So, when you're building custom experiences for people, you have to make sure that your pricing of the components of that experience add up, right? So when you say, hey, I want to do a flower wall, the question is, are all of your flowers priced correctly? And I talked to so many florists who are still working off of a PDF that their wholesaler sent them 4 years ago, and they're still like, oh yeah, this is the pricing of this. You have to get those prices updated, right? Whatever system that you're using, you have to be able to go in and say, hey, let's go look at this. In fact, most of our clients will update their floral pricing once or twice a year. And it is a process. It's going to take you an hour or two to go through everything and just kind of go down that list and be like, hey, is this right? Is this right? Is this right? So that's an important thing. Make sure that you're updating this pricing for your flowers. Make sure, and generally what customers do, just because you can't put a barcode on a flower, right? There's no systems out there that automate down to the individual stem, an up to the minute price on this. So what most florists do, the way that they solve this, is they price for the year, right? So they say, hey, here's this flower, here's the average of the year. If it's super seasonal, like peonies or something, they'll maybe have 2 different items in their library, right? They'll have an in-season peony and an out-of-season peony. But the key thing here is, even though they're probably, how do you say, there's some number crunchers out there who's like, but there's a more accurate way to do that. There probably is, but you will always have to ask yourself as a business owner, is it worth the time for me to go in and do all of this? And maybe I feel better about it inside, but my kids don't, because I spent my entire afternoon working on this, instead of hanging out with them after I got off work. And so you have to be asking those real questions about, and truth be told, we deal with companies that are, in the tens and 30 millions of dollars of revenue, that we deal with very, very large companies, and they're still working on these same systems, right? So set up your projections, look at the overall cost for whatever that flower was for the course of the year, run the numbers and say, you know what, here's what our average cost was, and then add, 10 to 20% of that, so that whenever you're building out that flower wall or that hanging installation, the ingredients are properly priced out, so that if prices raise or something happens, inflation doesn't quit kicking over the next year, you're still covered later in the year. So I'm seeing that a lot. You just make sure you're updating those prices, update those once or twice a year. And the other thing, and I didn't plan on saying this, but I wanted to share this. I was thinking more about this, is simplifying your systems. So many people in the floral industry, there is these formulas of like, hey, you need to do 3x markup and then a 20% labor, and then some people even have an extra percentage that they add onto it. Well, what I've seen, there's a particular florist of ours. I won't say their name because I don't know if they'd want me sharing it or not, but they just simplified all the math on it. And instead of doing 3x plus 20%, they just did 3.2x, right? So if I buy a rose for
Right.
$1, I'm just doing $3.60 for that. And what that does, again, everybody that's listening to this call, you're probably sharp on math. You're a business owner. Not all of your team is, right? And as you have more team members pulling this together, simplify those processes down. And instead of being like, oh, I'm going to add this and then percentage here and percentage here, just bake that into one number. And I've seen this being a trend that our customers are saying there's got to be a simpler way. I'm still charging for labor. It's just built into that raw multiple. And so everything I've talked about here, as you're looking into the new year, let's simplify down this pricing. Let's make it more consumable and easier to use, and make sure you're still being accurate.
I love it. I love it. And if anyone is watching, I'd love to hear if you want to share, like, how do you do your pricing? Does this make sense? I know everyone, like you said, Ryan, lots of people do it lots of different ways, but if we can simplify it and make it easier, I think that would be great. And I do think it makes sense to not be constantly updating the pricing, right? Because it is time consuming, and things do change, but it's not like these huge swings.
Right.
It's pretty constant. Obviously there are the outliers of that statement, but for the most part, I think that makes sense. And again, it's just making better use of your time, but still making sure that you are making the money that you need to make at the end of the day.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
I don't usually do this while people are talking, but I do want to mention that, like, not all of our branches, but if you wanted one, I'm sure they would do it. But most of our branches send out like weekly price lists. So, that way you kind of know what's going on. Again, they're not changing everything like day to day or whatever. They're looking at it, like whether it's weekly or monthly. Everyone does it differently. But if you aren't getting our emails and you are a customer, then you can subscribe. So I'm just putting that link there so you can subscribe to our email if you're not already getting it. I do have to say, though, if you're not a customer and you subscribe, you're not going to get these weekly price lists. We don't just send them out to whoever. So if you aren't a customer, you just need to register, and you can find that on our website as well. So that will help you with this step of gearing up for 2024. So
absolutely. And you said a really good point too there. Like you have to play offense and defense, as a small business owner. And so when you're bidding at something that's 6 months out, and you're like trying to like estimate what some really complex, it's easy, when there's a $250 bouquet, that's pretty simple. But when you're talking about, some big installation and what that should look like, that's one side of it, projecting that out. But then the second side of it is, hey, when you actually get that price listed and just double checking, hey, am I pretty close on these numbers, right? Like, or do I need to rethink my recipes because the numbers have adjusted more? You have to play both sides of that, and those email lists are hugely helpful for having a quick, easy access to double check that you're charging the right amount, and building the arrangements. Because that's the other beautiful secret about floral design is you can adjust that recipe the week before, because you can say, what, things change, maybe you have more flexibility, maybe you have less flexibility, but your design creativity can complement for that pricing that's changed. So I love that email list going out, that kind of like that weekly checklist for people.
Yeah, and it's just really useful. And again, things aren't like fluctuating. And like, if you're like I don't know pricing, right, guys, because I don't really sell flowers. I don't know the pricing stuff of it, but I do know from listening to my husband for the last, God, again, just talking about age, we just celebrated our 22nd anniversary, wedding anniversary. So we've been together for 28 years, and this whole time he's been in the wholesale floral world. So he knows pricing literally just, it's just ingrained in his being, really. So eventually, I feel like if you're newer to it, you'll know those things off the top of your head, and you'll know just seeing like your invoices whether things are going up or down, right? But you still need to update your systems for that.
That's right. That's right. That's exactly right. You get a feel of it.
Yeah. We got a comment over on Instagram from Flower Alley. And they say they do 4 times because they don't have time to do it any other way. So agree with your theory on time.
Yeah, and yeah, I love hearing that because I hear 4 times more. Like, nobody wants to do 3.6x, right? That's not that's too complicated, right? So they're like, you know what, though, not just 20% labor, maybe we'll bump that up. So that's I like hearing that again. But this idea came from florists. We were hearing florists that were doing exactly like they were. Let's simplify this down, make this more streamlined so that we can be quicker in what we're doing.
Yeah, exactly. All right, Ryan. So, I'm all about getting the most out of our resources and doing more with whatever we have right now. So, what kind of things do you recommend florists exploring to be able to do that?
Yeah, a big thing is automation. Find a way to
Yes.
automate yourself, duplicate yourself. If you aren't using automation at this point, it's time to get started. You have to find ways and it's more than just automating the simple things, right? Like, hey, if somebody fills out an inquiry form on your website, they should automatically be getting an email back from after that's filled out. That's letting them know, hey, typically we respond to these inquiries in 25 or 24 to 48 hours or whatever the framing is. That's a simple automation. That's like, hey, you can't be standing on a ladder, putting up a chuppah and be responding to somebody that came in when you're trying to grow your business. So to get started on that, now's the time to get started. But one thing that's really cool is I've heard people using this automation in really creative ways. So there's one particular company I asked them after they told me this. I was like, can I steal that? I just talked to them a couple months ago, and I was like, I'm going to steal that, like, because I really want to share this with other florists. What they do in that automated email, right? So just having the automated email is step one. Right. Don't be responding, having to respond immediately. Have that automated email that kind of explains your processes. But they actually send out a floral guide PDF with all the new inquiries for like what flowers are in season. And the powerful part about that is maybe this bride coming in, maybe she just knows all flowers and all the seasons. Maybe she's a florist, right? But more than likely not. More than likely,
Right.
like, she doesn't know that there's an in season and out of season or in peonies. More than likely, she may not know that all the colors she's seeing on Instagram are not what the flowers come in, right? Like they got AI tools creating, these weird colors on flowers that don't exist. So what she does is she sends out that floral guide to give that customer education. And it goes to every single customer so that when that customer is walking into that next conversation with them, maybe they don't look at it, but there's a good chance that they've looked at it and they've been educated and they can have a better conversation. So find those anytime that you find a frustration point in your sales funnel where you're like, oh man, and you hear a lot of people being like, well, they just don't need me, like that's their way of like making themselves feel better that a customer said no or that a customer made something hard. Anytime you have those
Right.
moments, take a step back and ask why. Like, why am I having these moments? And then I guarantee you, nearly every one of those moments can be fixed if you go earlier in the process and set up some automation to communicate and educate that client. Super powerful. Use automation. Find creative ways to take things that are taking a long time. Find a way to automate them. Go to Chat GPT, y'all. I love Chat GPT. It's
Yes, we're obsessed. We use a couple different platforms, but it's been amazing.
and like literally, if you don't know what to do, if you're like, oh, I don't know what to automate, just go to ChatGPT. Be like, hey, I'm a florist. I've got a company that's 500,000 in revenue. I've got 2 employees. What are some ways I can automate my business? And then it's going to spit out a list of ideas for you. So definitely use that to even think of the ideas for automation.
Yeah, I think that's amazing. And obviously, like I said, I'm a huge fan of automation. We use it a ton here at Mayesh because there's no way that we could communicate with the people on a large mass scale, especially kind of like new customers and things like that. And again, getting that education done and all of that. But I also wanted to point out that, Ryan, you talked about really kind of the customer inquiries and those people and kind of getting them in. But also automation is a really great way if you do have a piece of content, offering it up to your community. It might be a good way of attracting new clients as well, not just taking care of the ones that you have. So it's also a marketing tool then as well for you.
Yeah, absolutely. We had something on our website back in the day when we sold our company in 2019, but we had a floral budget calculator. And the coolest part about that, not only did it educate the clients that were in, but there were a lot of clients that might not have been a fit for us. And they found out from that budget calculator, right, that their wants and their needs were different. And it totally became a marketing tool because we were helping everyone, even people that were not in a part of our sales funnel. Every person that hit our website, we were helping them set expectations for this flow. It's a win-win. It's a win-win to be able to help kind of, and it works for marketing wonderfully.
Yeah, I love it. And I'm curious for everyone that's watching too, like have you set up any automation yet? Is this something new for you? Would you like to have a whole mornings with me a show about automation? Just let me know. I don't know if that's something you guys want or not. Or I did have someone reach out recently about AI. I feel like we should have
Yeah.
a show and maybe even a panel, because I think there's a lot of people doing a lot of really different cool things with AI. I know we probably use it differently than like florists do, but I feel like what we do could help florists as well. So yeah, love AI tools. It's just really, really amazing.
Right.
Yeah. Okay. Are we ready for the next question? I feel like we are. Yes. Just checking, make sure I'm not missing any comments or anything like that. Okay, so a new year typically means setting your goals or intentions. A lot of us do the boards, right? And, a lot of people don't like saying, this is what I'm going to do in 2024. They might just want to have words. And again, like just setting an intention for the year. But, I'm hoping that most of us that have businesses do want to set goals. I think that's important. And Ryan, do you have some ways that florists can examine their goals for 2024?
Yeah, the easiest way to do this is to look at 2023. How are you feeling? How are you feeling right now? We just got through a heavy wedding season. Do you need less work? Do you want? I commonly hear that. Every few years there's someone that says, "Hey, I want less work but bigger events." Do you want more work? Are you at a point that you're saying, "Hey, we saw a great year," or maybe we didn't see as great of a year as we would like to, and we need more work. We need more events coming in. Do you need more off-season events, right? Is that a part of your strategy? It's like, hey, instead of doing 72 events on one weekend in October, maybe I do 72 events across the year, and I find creative, intelligent ways to do off-season work. Are there dates next year in your planning here? Are there dates next year you need to book out? Are there events like our team just got back from Wedding MBA, or maybe some other event that's out there? Find out the dates for that education and that personal growth event and book out those dates. Use your software for like there should be something in your software where you can be able, and Curate at least there is, where you can be able to click out and mark those dates booked. So anytime an inquiry comes in and you go to create the event, it sends you an alert saying, hey, just a heads up, you said you were done. You said you were done for today. You can create the event, but I want to give you a warning. And that's really powerful. Like when you're looking at it your next year and asking those questions about vacation, time off, find those opportunities for training and for education that you could be able to grow yourself. So those are a lot of the key things. So the goal could be money, right? It could be revenue. Hey, I want to hit, $200,000 in revenue next year. That could be the goal. The goal could be profitability. Hey, I really need to bring in 42 or 72,000 next year when everything's said and done. That's what I brought. I got it. The dog doesn't survive without the dog food. So I got to buy the dog food, right? So what do I need to do that? Well, I got to hit 72 or whatever that number is for you personally. Look at that and ask that question. And then all of your strategy around the year should go back to that goal. But then also ask the question above that, what's my goal for this company as a whole? Is it still the same thing that it was last year? Because as you're growing, I know some people that their intention is to sell their company. Well, good. Is that still your intention, right? Re-ask that question and then ask, how does my goal for this year align with that kind of longer term goal? And everything else within the company can work from that point. All of the decisions about the number of days off you're taking, about the number of trade shows, because if you're just signing up for a wedding show just because it's a wedding show and it's marketing and that's what you have to do, you're going to get burnt out really easily. But if you understand that, well, the reason I'm doing this is because it's tying up to this higher thing I'm working toward, that makes all the difference for you.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Speaking of wedding MBA, how was that?
I heard great things. I was at another event at that same time. Our team went, and it was just incredible. There were so many. The reports that I'm getting back is just so many florists there that they got to engage with and interact with. So if you had a good if you're listening and you had a good interaction with one of our team members, make sure you shout out their name so I can internally give them a high five. But it was my first year. There were two events scheduled at the same time, two event professional events. And my team went to one. Me and another team member went to a different one. And it's my first wedding MBA I think I've missed in a decade.
Yeah, that's great though. I'm sorry that you missed it, but it sounds amazing.
Don't you wish we were back in 2021 where nobody had any events at all? Everybody was like nervous. There's a whole getting back into events. You're like, can we do this? Should we do this? I don't know. Now they're bucking on top of each other.
Yeah. Lots going on. I did get a question from Floor Soul asking, what tools can we use to automate?
Yeah. So, man, this could go on. There's a lot of options here. So, I'd be remiss if I didn't recommend Curate. We have a lot of automation built in our software. You have the ability to kind of like automatically email people. That automated email after a form response, super valuable. So find that. If you're not using Curate, there are plugins, I think, for like Google Forms that can do this, or for WordPress form, or for Squarespace that could do the same thing. So find those tools for that kind of automating the email response. Another thing is, if you're still using Excel to build this stuff out and you're doing more than 10 events a year, you're not automating yourself. If you're using Excel to build out your proposals and your pricing, again, those two things, using Excel and you're doing more than 10 events a year, you have to completely automate yourself, because my wife and I, we had we call it a Frankenstack, right? We had all these tools that were like just the way it's shoved together that didn't work together. So ask what tools you're currently using. So if you're using Excel, find a floral software that is going to automate your stem counting process and your pricing process. Find tools that are going to automate kind of like nuanced things in your platform. A lot of people really love Zapier. Zapier is a tool that connects and does a lot of automation of connecting different parts of your business. So if there's, if there's something like a form tool connected to something else, I know a lot of people really love Zapier for automation. Yvonne, are there like some tools for like social? I'm not super big on social. Like personally, I've got a great team who does it. Are there some tools for automating like posts and things like that on social?
I am sure there is too, but we don't use a ton of it either, just because I feel like a lot of what we do is very real time based off of what's going on at our branches and what's going on in the flower world. But we do have like different automation to like I wouldn't call it automation, but more like scheduling and things like that. So like when we do have more of like our green content or things that we need to like post a bunch of times, now we have like kind of that AI built in. We use HubSpot. I've talked about HubSpot a bazillion times. So we use HubSpot for like our CRM and social and things like that, especially when we're posting on, 42 different pages. So we're a little bit of a different beast. But what I love about it now is that the social's built in, but the AI is built into that. So like if we need to do something, once a month, it can like give us the different messages and things like that and change it up. So that way we're not like, how do I say this again for the 10th time, but a different way?
There was something somebody showed me on. I use Grammarly. They showed me this. Just I was at this event this last week in Seattle, and somebody showed me there's a way to kind of like automate using Grammarly, like your tone. Like if you're sending an
Yes.
email, and I like to joke. I've got like an EQ of 0. I'm good at like data. I love data, but like in like interpersonal stuff, I got so much room to grow. So there are times I'll literally like I'll write something out and then I'll be like, hey, let me go. And you can automate your not just your spell check. Spell check has been around for a while, but like your tone check, right? And
Yes.
being able to automate, when you have a particularly frustrating mother-in-law that keeps butting into the process, right? And you're trying to figure out how do I get the point across, but still do it in a way, that's a really powerful thing. Something people are doing and this goes to the AI. We totally need to do an AI automation conversation. But
I agree.
what they'll do is they'll create a template of the tone of their company, right? So when you talk about your brand voice and when your marketing materials, your social media posts, your emails, like that brand voice, like how does that sound? I was talking to an owner of a small business the other day, and they're like, in our interviews with our, this gets a little edgy here. In our interviews, like we'll drop an F-bomb on purpose, right? Because that's who we are, right? And they're like, if you can't handle it every day, you don't need to be a part of our company. And we do the same with our customers. We're very straightforward with them. And like, that's completely opposite of me. But what I love so much about that story is that they know who they are, right? And they know what their brand voice is. So find what that is. And then what you can do is you can build what's called a prompt in AI that says, hey, and it's just like a paragraphed text about your brand voice and the way that you talk and the way that your messaging is. And every time you want to send out a social media post, or every time you want to, write, an email that you're just trying to make sure fits who you are, you can say, hey, look at this email that I'm sending and make sure that it's matching my brand voice. And you copy and paste that snippet, and it will automatically rewrite that for you so that you don't have to do that time work, like, spending 7 hours trying to get it exactly right. So there's so many automation tools, but that's kind of like the soup du jour, is that ability to automate some of the spell check, to automate some of the tone check in your processes.
Yeah, which is really cool. And then like Chat GPT, I think you can do it. And then I also learned about a different platform called Claude. It's Claude AI. I need to put this in my in my notes so that way I remember to tell you guys where to find all of this stuff. But like in Claude, you can like if you find like a couple of passages that you've written that you're like, this is my voice. Like I love the way this sounds. This is who we are. I want everything to sound like this. You like find like 3 examples and you're like, you teach it like, this is my brand voice. And then you put in you just paste it in, and then it's learning about your company. It's learning about your brand voice. And then you can say, you have a sentence and you're like, okay, that's not really my brand voice. And you can say, rewrite this in my voice. And then it will rewrite it. And it's amazing. So just, again, really cool. Not necessarily automation, but AI kind of stuff is really, really cool.
Yeah, for sure.
Someone did bring up that they Flower Alley, they have 25 templates in HoneyBook and they have AI responses built in. I don't know a lot about HoneyBook, but that's pretty cool.
That's awesome.
Yeah. Anyone else using automation, and what kind of tools do you do that? If you are listening, share them in your comments so that way other people can see. That would be super, super cool. Someone says Curate makes sense. He is so savvy. You're savvy.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much.
Just so you know. See someone saying yes. I'm just catching up. And someone was saying, this is fabulous advice, and they just came in. So thanks for watching, guys, and thanks for enjoying our advice. We still have, I think, a little bit more to talk about, so I'm hoping you hang in there. If you do have questions, you are welcome to post them. If you're on Instagram, go ahead and post them there. I have someone watching and putting them in my show notes here that I'm using. And then if you're on Facebook or YouTube, go ahead and post them in the comments, and we'll definitely get to those. Okay, so my next question for you, Ryan, is cash flow. With obviously without cash flow, there really isn't a business. Like we're not going to last long without that. So, obviously, kind of having that in your goals and being intentional about that. But how can businesses think about cash flow for next year to get prepared if this isn't something that they're normally kind of examining?
Yeah, we always would face this every year in February at our company where we're like, oh shoot, we didn't think about this, did we? Right? And so like for us, it was super key. We most of our events were between April and October. Generally, we did larger events comparatively, but we typically only did 35 of them. At our company, we had one full time employee, a lot of freelancers who worked with us, so we weren't significantly large. But at the same time, even as small as we were, it was so easy to run into cash flow issues in January, February, March when there are no events coming in. So something we
Right.
did very early on was we changed our retainer from being $500 to being 50% of the event value. And that's just the initial. Obviously, you can keep selling up the event value, but the initial event value was 50%, and that was super huge for us, and it made all the difference when it came to taking care of expenses. Now, this is kind of like a cautionary tale here, because you have to make sure we had, and this worked for us, may not work for everybody else. We had a secondary bank account that whenever we had a particular amount that was in there, we would take a chunk of that and put that into that bank account, so we didn't even have to think about touching it. It was always in that separate bank account, because we still had to pay for the events. Because I see both things happening, right? I see people that don't have enough cash in January and February, and then I see in October and September companies whose cards are failing, right? Because they run out of cash. They're having to spend all of the money on all this product, and they don't have enough cash in their bank account to cover all of the expenses coming in. And it's a headache, right? That's the worst thing to deal with when you're in the middle of, trying to work through all these small dynamics, and you're just trying to fill up your tank and your card's getting declined. You're like, well, it's not that you don't have money. That's not, you built a great company. It's just a cash flow thing of like trying to make sure, and then you're having to go and move stuff around, which again, if you put the cash back, it's easy to move that into the right spot. But I've seen both happen in a lot of small businesses. So think through that cash, that cash option, right? I know a lot of people that are like, well, I don't want to raise my retainers because I'm scared about what I'll do with that money. I, I would really, maybe this is a year for you to take the step up and to ask that question about yourself and your business practices, to say, how do I move past that point where I'm nervous about my mistakes and start creating good, strong business practices, right? So yeah, you're supposed to be using, especially if you're wedding an event only, right? Like if you're doing retail and you're doing Valentine's Day and Mother's Day, you're gonna have a little bit of cash popping in there during the off season. Whereas if you're just weddings and events, you don't have a lot outside of these retainers for the events that you're booking. So I really would recommend to take a look at that retainer, to raise that retainer, and to make sure that you're creating this really powerful experience for your company, right? Where your company can feel confident that there's enough cash, especially if you got employees, full-time employees. And you also want to think creatively about that too. Like, what are things that we can do in the off season so that I can make sure I'm keeping my full-time employees working if you don't have a seasonal agreement with them or something like that. So cash flow is king. Take a look at that. Your taxes as well. I know a lot of people, there's nothing illegal or wrong about paying your taxes early, right? So I know a lot of people that they'll say, oh, I got a payment of $5,000 in, right? So I want to pay taxes on that. I will say, make sure you're talking with your accounting, because this gets really hairy when you're talking about weddings and events in particular, because technically that tax is not owed until the transfer of goods, right? It's not the cash coming through, because they could bump up the value of that contract, or they could technically bump it, depending on your contract, bump it down beneath their initial payment. So you have to remember, like, the actual taxability happens at a later point, and your amount of tax is not connected to the payment. So if they paid $5,000, it's not super clear. If you've got some non-taxable items on there, it's not super clear exactly what that percentage will be. it's a super hairy topic. So I guess my big feedback is make sure you're talking to your accounting or your financial person to ask that question. If you want to pay those taxes up front because you would prefer not to miss it down the line, you totally can. Just make sure that you're doing the legwork and keeping those records and watching that cash flow throughout the year.
Yeah, I like that. And I like what you said too, like if there are times of year where, you don't have a lot going on and there isn't a whole lot of cash flow, is there some creative way to start bringing in money? Is there something
Yep.
else, different revenue stream that you could be looking at and trying out and seeing if that, like, again, helps bring in that cash? So that way, yeah, you're not getting all stressed out about
Absolutely.
it's not fun. Good stuff. Any comments on that, guys? Anything you do to help manage cash flow throughout the year? Would love to hear it. All right. So last but not least, Ryan, let's talk about technology and systems. I feel like we talked a little bit about that, but what do you want to talk about, and how do people plan for that for 2024?
Great. Well, now's the time. Now is the time to be looking into those systems and to be asking the questions around those pieces, because if you, as you're ramping up into wedding and proposal season, it's always better to make sure that you're getting your systems in place, right? So if you're changing softwares, if you're implementing a software, if you need to implement a software, just do it when it has to happen, when you get the urge to do it, because as a small business owner, you aren't always going to have that. There's always going to be some other bigger problem. So when you're like, you know what, I got the time to do it, implement it, even if it's a busy time. But if you're listening to this podcast, right, and you're listening to this live stream, this is your sign. If you have to make a system change, it's better to make it in a lower time and a time when you're not as busy and crazy. So you have to ask those questions. Are you confident with the proposals and the experience that's going out to customers? Are you confident in your automation? We were talking about Zapier. We were talking about some of these social tools that are out there. Are you confident in the technology and systems that they're going to work, that they're going to scale with your company? Is your sales process? Ask yourself about your sales process. Sales is a 4-letter word in the floral industry. So many times, no one likes to be that greasy salesman that's like, would you like an add-on with that? So I understand that. So whatever you call it, your consultation process, ask that question. Are you frustrated about something? And if so, how do you implement a system in place? Because up until you're over $1 million in revenue is the dollar that we find with our customers. When you're over $1 million, it's a different world, right? It's about your processes. But when you're under $1 million, processes are important, technology and systems are important, but you are the glue. Like the owner generally is the glue for that company that's like tying all of the pieces of that company together. And the question is, without automation, without systems in place, can you keep, as we joked earlier this call, can you keep all your hair and not pull all your hair out if you're manually doing all of these things? So now is the time to be able to do it. Is your pricing right? That's another thing. Like, are you confident in your pricing that's going out? Are you confident that you're going to be profitable even though you're 9 months out from this event? Are you confident that what's going out represents your brand? We like to call it brand worthy. Is it brand worthy for you? And so those are the questions you have to ask right now at this point when you're preparing for the new year. Was there something you were looking at making a change or implementing? And if the answer is yes, in your planning, figure out how this fits in that goal that you set earlier and begin to implement those. So this is less about suggesting specific things and more about reminding everyone who's on this, like, these take time to implement. They aren't things you do over a weekend. That you have to get used to the system. Your team has to get used to the system. So make sure that you are giving time before, a month or 2, 3, 4 months before things get crazy for your team to be able to get used to whatever new technology that you're using.
Right. And I urge everyone to, because technology and systems and things like that can be expensive, right? Like sometimes they're not cheap. Sometimes they are. Like, for example, one of my pet peeves is like trying to find a time and a date where everyone can have a meeting or something like that, right? So instead of going back and forth, I'll be like, here's my Calendly link. pick the time and date you want to meet and it's done. Like, and then you can set up reminders and things like that too. We use Calendly for some other Mayesh things as well. And that's like something super powerful. It's not very expensive. But then, for example, like, our HubSpot is crazy expensive. But it's like literally probably is so powerful. It's like having 3 other people on my team that I'm not having to pay full-time salaries for, right? So when you think about it that way, it's really, really inexpensive for the output that we get from it. So just kind of think about it that way as well, because I feel like sometimes that can be like a sticker shock, like, oh my gosh, I don't really know. But it's, again, how can you do more and grow your business, right? Because I'm guessing, planning for 2024, hopefully most of that, well, not most of it, part of that will be growing and flourishing and blooming, right? So how can you do that with the resources that you already have? And a lot of your big resources, the big money is like spent on teams and people and things like that.
Right.
So when you introduce technology and systems, that again allows the people that you already have to do more with the time that they have, because they're not going back and forth 20 times with someone booking a meeting, and they can set up like what you were talking about with the automated response emails and things like that, and make it feel like it's really coming from them. Like, you can personalize these things too, guys. It doesn't have to sound like it's like a robot or anything like that. You can write it with your voice, like what we talked about, and and really make it feel like it's coming from you directly. It is, but it's not, right?
Right.
So yeah, any other questions that you might have about technology or systems, let me know. I know we talked about it a little bit earlier too, and we named off a bunch of different things that you can use. You did mention Zapier, Ryan, and I have used that a bunch of different times, just because we do have lots of different systems, or there's different forms or whatever, and or I'm working with like someone else and they have a form, and it's like outside of Mayesh, and so I can actually get that information into my system, and I'm not having to like download and upload and creating the lists and doing the things. And so it literally saves so much time when you use things like that, and obviously they can be a little daunting, especially if you're learning something new. Zapier can be confusing depending on like what other systems you're connecting. But there's always lots of help. And of course you have Ryan and I that you can always reach out to as well. We could do another show. If you want to do a show on something specific, just let me know and I'd be happy to do it. So very good. And so talking about, I feel like, technology and systems, I think that's a good segue to ask you about Curate, Ryan. I know you've been really busy with Curate, and there's been a lot of different projects going on. Is there anything new? What do you want to share? What's going on?
Oh yeah, we've one of the super exciting things. A few years ago, and I think I may have talked with you about this maybe on one of our last calls. But when we started this initially, I'm just an event pro who just does what event pros do, which is just get stuff done, right? So we're like, man, this is a problem. So I started building and programming the software. We began to bring in more developers, grow out the software. A couple of years ago, we realized like, okay, there's a lot of customers asking for, how do you say, if you build a house, right? But they're asking for a second floor on the house, or some additional things on the house that they want, that we know that we need a stronger foundation for. So literally, Yvonne, we over the last 2 years, we have built the software from scratch. We've completely rebuilt the platform. So it's been super exciting because there's been some things that people have been asking for the longest of times. Now, we've got a ton of users still on Curate Classic that, next year we're going to be working through some migration for. So we're excited about that. But one of the cool things we just launched in the new platform is like a color picker tool. People have been asking for this for the longest of times, where they can be able to have a photo and be able to just immediately grab different nuanced colors from that. And that just blew people's minds. They were super excited to be able to see the ability to be able to very quickly pull in and grab that. One thing we did as well, and this gets super granular, but I'm going to go ahead and say it in case there's any users out there that would be excited about this. Another powerful thing, we just allowed people to actually have multiple contracts for an event. So, a lot of people, they've got one contract, one and done. My wife and I, that's what we did. We had one contract, you signed it, great, one and done. For a lot of other people, there's a more nuanced flow, right? Like maybe they need a new contract, or maybe they need two contracts on there. So we actually just launched this. Again, we've had hundreds of customers who asked us for this ability to have multiple different contracts on a proposal experience. So we launched that in our new platform, and a lot of this has been just feedback we've gotten over the years that we've been able to rebuild into this. So it's been so cool hearing from customers about a lot of these very specific problems that they're having, and our new platform has empowered us to be able to actually solve those. So it's been really cool. We've got a great team at Curate. We're actually doing we've been remote for a couple of years. We're doing an in-person meeting. So if anybody has any tips on there on great in-person meetings, like if you're bringing in a team or people from around it, I'd love to have them on here, because we're going to be having them come into St. Louis to our headquarters in next month. So that's going to be exciting. And I lean on the event pros out there for any fun ideas for events like that.
I love it. That's so exciting. Congrats, Ryan. Okay, so guys, I posted the link for Curate in the comments, so you can go check that out. Also, I posted the link for Curate's Instagram, so if you want to connect with them there as well. And anything else you want to share, Ryan, before we wrap things up?
I'm just excited about 2024. I know, there's been 2023 has been an up and down year. Some people it's blown it out. Some people it's kind of lower than 2022. Just remember that 2024 is the new 2019, right? You're back to you were going back to this flow. Hopefully, I'm not Nostradamus here, but hopefully, like it is back to your normal flow, and that's what we have to plan on. We have to move. I just got off the call with an event pro a couple minutes ago, who was just kind of walking through their last few years and kind of their goal setting for forward. So 2020 everything was wrecked. 2021 was like this weird mixed year. 2022 was this huge surge. 2023 we kind of saw a little bit of a decline across the industry as things were like normalizing out. 2024 is finally that year where we are back at a common pace, and it is the year for you to be able to say, let's set goals, let's set realistic goals, let's set realistic preparation, and you literally take some time, take a day, don't do anything else that day, just plan this stuff out for this next year, and I promise you it's going to make your year next year so much better. So that's the key thing I just want everybody to leave with is that preparation and that planning in 2023 is going to make your 2024 so much better.
I love it. Woo! Let's go, guys. 2024, here we come. And guys, that's a wrap on today's show. I want you to mark your calendars for Tuesday, November 28th at 12 p.m. Eastern. Our current Mayesh Design Star, Abby Chick, will be joining us. And we're going to continue our year-long discussion on sustainability with her focus on the retail florist. Guys, if you haven't watched her videos yet, whether you're a retail florist or an event florist, definitely check them out. They're amazing. All of our design stars have done just an amazing, stellar job at sharing all of their tips and tricks and all of the kind of behind the scenes and how they think about sustainability within their. So I hope you check it out. And I also just wanted to thank you so much for spending time with us today. I want to wish our Mayesh community a safe and yummy Thanksgiving because I won't be live next week. I'm sure you guys will be busy too. And I'm really so thankful of being able to connect with you guys, and always so thankful for your continued support throughout these years of us doing the show and being a company and selling flowers and doing all the things that we do. So you allow me to do something that's just truly amazing. And thank you. Thank you so much. Again, happy Thanksgiving, guys, and I will see you soon. Bye-bye.